Okay, I will get started as people shuffle in or out. So yeah, you all heard from me in the last panel, but I'll just kind of briefly frame some of Vana. With Vana, we're really focused on kind of the data part of the stack. So I think that there's a lot of discussion today about like decentralized AI, how you can make sure that AI is controlled by many. But I think there's also this really tactical element of like, how do you build AI that's decentralized in a way that's better than a centralized player? Like, what can you actually get in a decentralized environment that might not otherwise be possible? So I'll be talking about the future of user-owned data and how that leads to user-owned AI as well. Maybe quick background on me while I fix this clicker. So I first got into crypto through mining Ethereum back in 2015. I was really interested in traditional currencies. I had worked at the central bank, kind of like the Federal Reserve, and then got to MIT and learned about decentralized currencies and this idea that you could run almost like a distributed central bank in your dorm room. And then got into AI research from some work I was doing at CSAIL, which is MIT's AI lab. There we go. Okay, so first I wanted to start with actually some definitions of kind of the difference between open source AI and user-owned AI. So today a lot of people are familiar with centralized AI, right? And what that is think like Anthropic, ChatGPT. That is a case where you've trained an AI model and it's controlled by one single company that keeps it private. On the other end of the spectrum, you have open source AI. So these are models where the weights are actually open. I guess, has anyone run an AI model like locally on your computer? Okay, some sense. And who has like trained an AI model as well? Okay, cool. So some like pure AI people. So I'll go into more technical depth in some things, but I'll also keep it high level. The downside though of open source AI is that it's not monetizable. And the reason why that matters is that AI models are really expensive to train. Today, they can cost like upwards of $100 million from the perspective of compute data. And as that scales, it's going to be upwards of a few billion, right? And so while there was a lot of funding that went into open source AI a couple of years ago, what people have realized is, hey, there's not really a business model. And so you really do need some way to monetize AI. What user-owned AI offers is kind of the best of both worlds. So you're able to have AI that's monetizable, but that's also controlled by many. So going into foundation models, these are basically the big AI models that are created by the major labs and the foundation of kind of all the AI that you interact with today. I think that these AI models are really becoming a source of truth and economic power. If you look at Google Bard, and there was kind of an example earlier this year where if you would ask it, like, paint me a historically accurate depiction of a medieval British king, it would show you like an Indian woman or a black man. And I think a lot of people laughed at this and were like, oh, it's like this crazy wokeness of 2023, 2024. But if there weren't another source of truth and there was just one big AI model, people would just start believing that that was the truth, right? And so whoever's deciding the data that goes into these AI models is basically deciding the truth for society in an AI native world. AI models are also a huge source of just economic power, right? OpenAI is doing like $3.4 billion in revenue. And so they're just becoming more and more this central source of economic power. Ultimately, AI models are really just a product of their data, right? So if you look at all the training data that was used to create GPT-3, most of it is the public internet. So that's Common Crawl. What Common Crawl refers to is basically you send a bot out onto the internet and it scrapes everything that's publicly available and puts it into this massive data set. That's pretty much what people train on today. But that actually represents a very small % of the overall data on the internet. So it's actually less than 0.1% of the internet that's publicly scrapable. Most stuff is behind a walled garden where you have to sign in to access it, or it's private. So think like all of your Google Docs, your email, anything you need to sign in to access. One of the problems that we're running into as an AI research community today is actually this idea of a data wall, where we're running out of data to train AI models on. Here, these are kind of progressively better and better AI models, and the amount of training data that was actually used to create them. If you look at Llama 3, which was trained on 15 trillion tokens, which is basically a word, that's pretty much using the whole public internet, right? So if we want to make AI models better, we need to find a way to get more data to train the AI models. And companies have realized, hey, this data has become extremely valuable. And they've actually locked it down to say, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm the only one who can access this data so that I can charge the most money for it. So like Reddit is earning $200 million from selling their data just for AI training. And there have been different platforms that change their policies. Think Stack Overflow, Reddit as well, where they change their API terms so that it's harder for people to access the data. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that you actually legally own all of your data. So in the same way that when you park your car in a parking lot, the parking lot doesn't own your car. When you put your data in a platform, you retain full legal ownership. So you can always get back that copy of your data. And this kind of offers this opportunity where while all the different monopolies have created a walled garden to protect their data, users themselves can actually go in and export their data. So users have a lot of data. If you compare the data of 100 million users who contribute data across 5 different data sources, they're actually able to get like 30 times more data than leading AI models today. If users are properly incentivized, you can actually create even more data, right? So if you have 100 million people record everything they say for a few years, which has like very important privacy considerations as well. But if you think about like Rewind AI and other products people are using, they're kind of already starting to do this. You can just get a huge amount of data. They also have a lot of compute. This is actually the number I mentioned in the panel before, but if you compare compute power of Ethereum miners and the proof of work days to what was used to train GPT-4, they have like 50 times as much compute. And then once you do have that foundation model that's trained by 100 million people who contribute their data, you can have collective governance and ownership. So users get paid when the model's used or paid proportionally to how much their data actually improved the model. They can also set usage rules like censorship and what it's allowed to talk about or not. I think a lot of people assume that foundation models have to be monopolies, but actually users as a whole have enough data to train even better AI models. So now getting to Vana's role, what we focus on is building user-owned AI through user-owned data. The 2 key concepts of the network are 1, non-custodial data. What that means is that you can permission out access to your data with your crypto wallet, just like you can do that with your funds. The other important piece is proof of contribution. So your data on its own is not that valuable, but once you combine it with other people's, then it's much more valuable because you're able to use it to train an AI model. The risk that we run into though, like if we all exported all of our Telegram messages and like put it in a giant pool, one person could kind of pretend to be 1,000 people and then take control of the data set. So what proof of contribution does is it ensures that data coming in is properly valued and actually mapped to a real legitimate data point that contributes to the data set overall. So there are a bunch of different data DAOs across the ecosystem. These are basically, you can think of it almost like a labor union for data. And there are great founders who are building each of these. So like the Resume Data DAO is the first venture-backed data DAO. Valara is the one that's focused on Twitter data. And they each have their own data token. They set up their own tokenomics and their own proof of contribution. A couple of data DAOs I would highlight. One is the Reddit data DAO, which has now created the first like user-owned AI model that's just good at kind of like commenting on Reddit, kind of shitpost style. And I'll mention too, so 1 million people tried to join the Reddit data DAO, but only 140,000 people passed proof of contribution. So that's ensuring that they're actually bringing good data in. The other one I'd mention is the 23andMe DAO, which is actually working to buy 23andMe, the company, outright, which only has like $110 million market cap. So they have about 3,000 people who've joined with their 23andMe data to say, hey, we want to take back control. And I think that calls out to this important component of data DAOs, where it's not just about selling data, it's also about negotiation power. If you're a developer who wants to start a data DAO, it's relatively simple. So you basically pick a data source. You don't need permission from any platform because you're just using data regulation to actually get the data out. Then there's kind of this build component. So there's a Solidity piece, a Python piece, and building out an interface. But we've got some templates to make that easier. And then kind of launching your data DAO. So something else I'll mention is that the top 16 data DAOs on Vana's network actually earn a share of emissions because they're onboarding data into the network. Most of the teams are 2 or 3 people, and initial build takes a couple of weeks. We also have an accelerator program right now with 12 data DAOs, and then the next batch is starting in a month or so. If you want to apply, feel free to come talk to me or to Shan. Here's a link to the docs and to our Twitter. Happy to take any questions after. Thank you.